Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Bring Your Big Energy podcast. I'm here today with Nikki Holbrook. Hi, Nikki.
Hi, Stacey. How are you?
Great. It is so awesome to have you on the show today. I can't wait to dig right in. So to tell the listeners a little bit about Nikki, so today's guest, Nikki, is a branding and web designer. She's a strategist and the founder of Flower Buds Creative, which I just love that name. And after spending nearly a decade in corporate America, in the marketing and UX design world, Nikki actually reached that breaking point that we're all unfortunately too familiar with, where the working environment that looks successful on paper was completely misaligned with her real life. So she's going to talk a little bit about what that burnout and that stress and emotional toll of working disconnected from her values eventually led to and what that felt like. So now through Flower Buds Creative, Nikki's mission is to help mission-driven businesses turn scattered ideas into clear, confidence building brands that truly connect. So welcome to the show. And before we dive into all the questions, I would love you just to take us back to your intensity point, that season where you realized that you physically and emotionally couldn't continue what you'd been doing, and what was happening in your world at that time. What did that look like?
Sure. So, like you had mentioned, I spent a decade in corporate America and was working in a lot of different industries for design in general. Getting praise from my bosses, getting praise from my managers, really, succeeding essentially in my roles, but never seeing any upward growth and just kind of feeling like I was stagnant within all of my jobs and couldn't see any road ahead. I was asking for roadmaps, I was looking for that growth and just couldn't get there. Oftentimes I was, working with a lot of men. It was a male dominant industry. One of the jobs I actually worked in, probably my best last job was working for a motorcycle accessories business called Brevzilla. And it was a really great job. A lot of men that were in that job, obviously, because it was motorcycle accessories. It was very male driven. I was kind of a fish out of water, but it was a great experience because it was more of a startup mentality. I was able to learn a lot of different skill sets and was kind of building a lot of my experience. And it was the first time I was at a job where a boss actually asked me, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself, moving? And I didn't have an answer for him because I felt like at that time I was in this place of just kind of being, trying to meet expectations. I wasn't actually thinking about what I wanted or what I needed. And so eventually in that job, I kind of hit a plateau. I couldn't grow again and was kind of searching for a new type of job, something completely different. I was thinking about going back to school for art therapy. And I jumped out of the job without having anything and was maneuvering around looking at things. And I felt like this wasn't it. I don't want to go back to school. That's not where I want to be. I really do like design. I just don't know what that means. And maybe I need a new environment. And so I ended up finding a job closer to my home where I grew up and started working there. And it was more of a startup energy. It was a tech startup called AWeber. And I was there for about a year and a half. It was not the best for me. I just felt like I was in a place where I didn't get to show my experience and show what I could do. I was kind of held back there a little bit. And so I really wanted to go into a senior role. I wanted to find something that would kind of grow me because this job at this point was kind of a lateral move from where I was before. My confidence was low. I felt like I couldn't do more. And so then I ended up getting a senior user experience role at Vanguard, which was a really big deal. Vanguard being a huge name and, people remark about how well you're treated at Vanguard, essentially amazing benefits, really cool, types of people to work there. And all of that was true. However, I think user experience and that type of placement was not for me. The work that I was doing was all about finances, which is just not where my head's at. I'm a creative through and through. But additionally, I felt like I was working with management that didn't allow me to be who I was. Coming from that job, the jobs where I was in a startup, it was encouraged for me to be direct and communicate what I was thinking and how I was feeling and kind of giving my opinions. Where at a big corporation like that, oftentimes there is a lot of hierarchy. It's not as flat at some of those other jobs. And so, not to say that your opinion doesn't matter, but it just gets lost in the sauce. And so many people that are in charge of things. And so for you to kind of speak your mind all the time is kind of stomped on. And I was feeling that a lot within my role within the manager that I had. And so at the time, I was working through I worked there from the beginning of 2020, at the end of 2019. I started there and felt really kind of uncomfortable in the beginning, probably in the first week. I knew it wasn't right for me, but I thought I got to stick with it. This is a great job. People love staying at Vanguard. They don't leave this company. And so I stuck it out and I kept going and went into 2020 working remotely at a job that was, it's kind of a dinosaur. It's a very old established company, working completely remotely. And it was a hard adjustment for a large company like that to completely switch to remote. And so it was a lot of meetings all day and then working at night. And it was just around the clock, kind of getting things done. But it was just because of how we were trying to adjust to this new way of working. And I just felt like I couldn't keep up. And the subject matter was really bland. And I was tending to a development team, which was not my thing. I was trying to teach developers how to code, which is not who I am. And so there was a lot of layers of things that I felt were holding me back. And finally, in the end of 2020, going into 2021, there was a layoff that happened within our team because I was working on a program that was not giving the business any money at the time. And so they cut us back. And I was one of the people that was laid off. But the way that those types of companies work is that they don't actually lay you off. They give you 90 days to apply internally to find jobs within the company and then move into different programs. And so I found a new job. I interviewed for a couple of them. I didn't know anybody because I hadn't, been in the office for more than probably 3 or 4 months at that point. And so I was kind of just relying on the people that I did know to kind of help me find those roles. And I finally found a job, got in, and the first day that I came back to go to this new job, I was walking down the stairs because I was still remote, walking down the stairs, and I started to sob. Like physically, I was just like, I don't want to do this. I can't do this. It was excruciating for me to even think about logging onto my computer. And it was just my body signaling to me that this wasn't for me anymore. It was really confusing and hard to absorb. I had a conversation with that new manager and told him, and he wanted to hop on a phone call with me, a face-to-face digital call. And in that call, as soon as we hopped on, he's like, I see, you're not good. Like he could physically see it on my face. And so I think it was jarring for him to see that happen. I mean, I didn't understand it. It was a lot of stress. There were a lot of things going on in my life at that time. I was trying to have a baby and we were having a lot of difficulty in going to specialists in the time of COVID, which is very different. The world was on fire. There was a lot of stress that was happening. And I think my job was the straw that broke the camel's back. I think I was identifying as a designer in these businesses and feeling like I needed to succeed in the corporate world, but also at the same time knew that there was something bigger for me. There was something that I could do to help people. That's what I've always wanted to do. When I first started out in college, I worked at an internship for a nonprofit that helped made a newspaper for homeless people that they wrote and sold to people on the street to help them get out of homelessness, make money and profit and build skills so that they could get out of homelessness. And that type of job was always what I longed for, something that could actually help and make a difference rather than make people money, unfortunately. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where I was, in that moment. There was a lot of internal feelings that maybe I couldn't communicate at the time, but were being stamped down inside of me. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think thank you so much for sharing because I think so many people can completely relate to being overworked, being overwhelmed, all the things, burnout. And I think something that you said is so interesting to me. Felt sort of this in your story, like you were trying to find a place to fit in along the way. And then in
Mhm.
other places, you're like, and so I was sticking it out. So, what would you tell to someone now having that rear mirror, right? 2020 vision in the back? What would you say to someone now if they're trying to decide if they should be trying to find a place to fit in? and going different places to do that? Or should they be sticking it out? What would you say?
Yeah, I think for a very long time, I was trying to fit myself into a space that wasn't for me. I guess it's not about fitting in, it's more about them accepting you and seeing your specialty, who you are. That should be celebrated. You'll know when you're in the right place. And sometimes you have to make those places, which is why we start our own things and we build things that make sense for us. But I would say that if you feel like you're struggling fitting in, oftentimes that's a signal that it's probably not the right spot for you.
Yeah. What types of things do you do to find out what comes next for you? How do you work through that burnout? Like, what are the things that you do to feed your soul and find your path as you exit that corporate America piece?
Yeah, so I had been in therapy this entire time throughout this whole process, before and after, still am, same therapist. And, she's seen my journey from the beginning to now, but she's really helped me see things clearly. And so I think therapy is really important to that experience. But also, one of the things that I noticed while I was still in these jobs and after I left was that I lost a piece of who I was and what I wanted to do, the things that brought me joy. I didn't focus enough on the pieces outside of the job that give me, make me feel like a full human. Creating art, gardening, those things are things that I've learned that I loved after I left Vanguard because I was able to actually put time to those things because I had the energy, the mental capacity to put into those things and they fill me back up. So that is really important to me too.
Yeah, and I think sometimes those, well, all times, most times, lots of times, those are the first things to go. Anything that joy or that's creative or it's fun because you're like, I've got to do the thing to bring home money. And so much of our life then becomes obsessed with and needing to do the thing that we can survive, right? That's human
Right.
nature. So one of the things you said too is it wasn't this corporate America these gigs, they weren't necessarily lining up with your values. And so that is in my spark process, that would be like the P in my spark process with the values. And, something I would have people do in the self reflection process was really do a values exercise to understand what your values are so that you can be doing work that is attached to your values that leads into then your purpose driven work. So, did you do some work around there? And what did that look like to be able to do that little civic voyage along the way?
Yeah. So again, talking to my therapist about the things that I love. I mean, she was able to truly help me identify that because I was stuck in this mindset of just you make money. A job is just to make money. You got to do it. Everyone's got to do it. You're an adult. I come from parents that didn't go further than high school and just went into a job and worked at that job for 40 years and you know, retired from that. And so their mindset around work is very different from mine. And it was very hard to think outside of the box because I was surrounded by that type of mentality. And so this was a big leap for me to kind of think about how I could find a way to transition into a job that I was doing for myself.
With
Yeah, helping people was really important to me, and so being in jobs where I was just helping rich people get richer was just not aligned with who I am. I am a very staunch feminist, and so I'm very strong about making sure that there's equality there with people that don't have enough money, and the idea of helping people make more money when they already have a ton of it just felt not great. And I think working in these larger sectors of business just kind of makes you see that even when we hit our numbers, it's never enough. It's more and more and more each year, and so having the ability to help people that are on a smaller scale create a business that actually makes them a sustainable income was something that was really important to me outside of, the design piece. There's a lot of really cool things that come out of my job that I didn't expect, but for the most part, the idea of helping women create jobs of their dreams was just my guiding light, my North Star, essentially.
So how did you decide those were the people that you wanted to help? I always ask when I'm coaching someone, I want like, who is your community that you want to serve? And then how close do you want to be to the problem, right? Do
Yeah.
you want like putting food in the bags to give to the people that are hungry? Or do you want to be driving global policy change? So for you, how did you identify what that market was for you, who
Yeah.
you were serving and how you were serving them?
Yeah, so like I said, going through my job as a woman within male dominated industry, was seeing that my story wasn't uncommon from a lot of what other women were experiencing. And so I wanted to help those women that were in those situations make that leap and have a strong foundation to be able to be successful in that. Because oftentimes I forget what the statistic is, but oftentimes people will, stop those outside pursuits after a year or two because they are not successful. It's really hard to be successful in business. And so having a great foundation and confidence is something that's really important to success. And so I wanted to help them have that, lily pad between that job and their new future to help them kind of create that for themselves.
And what does that really look like? Because I'm sitting here going like, that's interesting. Like I have the confidence that I feel like also as a small business owner, I'm not even sure what to do first. And so how do you help them when they come into you and they're like, hey, I need your help, or you find them? What does that relationship start to look like?
Yeah. So when people come to me, I oftentimes am telling them, we look at what you already have. Sometimes they just already have a brand or they already have a website. It's maybe one or two of them. Maybe they have both of them and they're looking for a redesign. They want to recreate themselves. And oftentimes I'm kind of evaluating what they have to help them understand, where they're at and what could, be better. My job when I'm creating branding for my clients is to think about their ideal audience, to look at who they want to serve. And like you mentioned, what is it that you want to do? Where do you want to be? And then creating those personas for those people and identifying maybe what the types of media that they're looking at, what type of branding they're interested in, what are the things that they trust, and then kind of looping that up with who you are, type of business you have, what type of presentation do you want to have? Are you more luxury? Are you more approachable? All of those types of personality traits I kind of ask you in the beginning through a questionnaire. And I take all of that information and I package it up into an intro package where we kind of almost create a brief where I think through, a mood board, look through some different types of imagery where we have different types of colors and everything else, and we align on a path forward. And in that moment, that is really the strongest piece of information to understand how we're going to communicate to your client what they want to see visually and what is most important to them. At the end of that week, we'll have a color palette, a logo family. So that means, 3 to 4 logos, depending on what we need for different types of placements, font families, and maybe even illustrations, textures, a photography direction, things like that. So you'll have a guide at the end that'll help you stay consistent visually throughout your marketing and communication. So that's a way for everything to be recognizable that it's you, for you to feel confident about how to produce any kind of content or marketing pieces. If you decide to go into the website work with me, that's something where we kind of build out a website that tells your story authentically. So going back to that first day, I really dive into, what your mission is, what your core values are, and what your clients are attracted to kind of take those pieces and build out a strong story that will attract them and identify them as the right people for you. So when they come to your website that they know they're in the right place and they're coming for the right thing. And so it's a structure that we build on your website. And then we take all of those visual pieces to create that consistency throughout. And it just helps you feel like you have this stronger marketing piece. So if people are asking you questions about your packages, you can just link them to your website onto this services page that tells them, an overlay of who you are and what you do. So any kind of questions people typically come up with, you'd be able to just point them to your website and not have to repeat yourself. And you have this structure for yourself to help bring the clients in.
So good. What do you feel like for mission driven, female led businesses? Like, what are the one or two like mistakes that women make that you could help them with today?
Yeah. So I think not considering your core values and your mission is really something that you need to make sure that you're doing. Your mission is so important. Like I was saying, I think I mentioned my North Star. I think having a guiding light is really important because you really want to structure what you're doing around that mission, because especially in the beginning of your business, you're going to be trying different things, you're going to be throwing stuff against the wall because things don't always work, and that's the truth. And so if you have that north star and you're able to say, this is what I ultimately want to do, then you're able to, redirect and change your path according to that north star. So you can change things, but ultimately you're trying to get to that top piece. So the journey is what changes, but that mission statement should be like the non-negotiable, that thing that is always staying the same.
Perfect. So I'm hearing you say, like, be rooted in your values, but really identify what that mission statement is, and everything else will follow. Is there sort of a hack for people to try to figure out what their mission is? Because I think a lot of small business owners come out and they're like, I mean, I even did this and I don't even know where I'm going to go with it. It's like I did the BND group as the name of my business because I want to do a lot of different things. And so it started by writing the book and doing speaking and now the podcast. But I'd love to do interior design. I'd love to run an event company. Like I feel like there's so many arms and legs that it could have, but you can only have so much time. So, how do you help them to find a mission that is collectively, I guess, umbrella enough that
Yeah.
you can add those different things and know they're going in the right direction?
Yeah, so you can't boil the ocean, and that's something that I try to tell people is that focus is really, something to try, and like sticking with something for a longer period of time to see how it goes and how it feels, most importantly. Do you like what you're doing, and do you like what you are trying to do? But finding that mission is really kind of aligned with your core values. What are the things that really stick with you? What's important to you as a person, as a human? Like I said, I'm a feminist. I'm really attracted to working with women because I want to help women. And so I think there's a certain amount of focus on the things that you truly believe in your worldview. How do you kind of harness that and take that mission? So it can be a lot of different pockets of your
Mhm.
business that align with that mission statement. Like you're saying, interior design, writing a book, those types of things can all align to one thing. But ultimately, I think it's finding that mission statement based off of who you are as a person, because all of the things that we talked about in the beginning, finding that right fit, if it's not aligning to you, like in your depth of your soul, it's going to feel wrong. It's going to not work because you're not going to love it. And so it's really important that it aligns to to your core values and who you are as a human.
Yeah, that's such a good point because I think so many people struggle with like, oh, it's already been done. It's already been done. Why am I going to do it? How am I going to be a different marketer? How am I going to be a different author, speaker? You name the thing. But the reality is we're all unique in the way that we've had different lived experiences, which make us appropriately positioned to lead in our own unique worldview way that works best for us, which I love. Okay, so we talked a lot about like what you can do and how you can get started with small business owners in their businesses and their sorry in their missions. In terms of like the next part of my spark process, we talk a lot about abandon because you can't just keep taking on more and more and more. So at some point along the way, whether you're reinventing yourself and you're abandoning old stories and old expectations you have of yourself or old identities, which are really hard and heavy things to do, or you abandon people's thoughts and feelings of you. What are the things that you had to abandon or you've learned to abandon along the way that have served you?
Well, first of all, the 9 to 5 mentality. That was
Mhm.
something that was so hard for me to lose. Not being strapped to a desk all day and working for myself, deciding that I don't have to do this, all day long. I may have mentioned that I'm a huge gardener, and that's, one of the things that I love to do during the summer. I mean, right now I'm getting my garden started, I'm putting all my veggies in, I'm so pumped for the season. And so sometimes I need to do that during the day. Like I need the light. I need to be able to do that. And so I give myself the time to be able to do those things. But before, it was really hard for me not to feel that guilt of, separating myself from my work and taking the time. Unfortunately, my mom is sick right now. She's dealing with some cancer, and I want to be there for her. And I'm going to be able to take that time because I don't have something that is keeping me at my desk from 9 to 5, and I don't have to request time off. I can go and do that for my mom. And so that 9 to 5 mentality was really something that I had to step away from to allow myself to have a true work life balance that I never was able to achieve before. So I would say that was my biggest one. But I think additionally, I am truly an introvert, which a lot of people are surprised to hear, but it is something that's really difficult for me to have these types of conversations and to speak on camera or to speak to other people like this. And that was something that I've kind of had to put aside to know that I am like, it's a little bit of imposter syndrome when you have those feelings. And so I think I've had to kind of put that on the back burner and know that I can trust myself and trust my experience and who I am and trust that I actually know what I'm talking about to have these types of conversations. But yeah, that's another really big thing is to trust yourself and to believe in yourself that you can do it for sure.
I love that. Trust in yourself. And I love this no 9 to 5. And I even still struggle with that. I think I have a lot of clients that struggle with that.
Mhm.
I have a lot of clients who are like are senior level, like director plus, I would say, or executives, and they're trying to find out what their next step is. And they're looking for like what I would call like a legacy career. And it's really hard because what you've lived your life on is certain KPIs and adrenaline and what success looks like. And I
Yes.
think moving into a world where you don't have to make all the money, you're at a blessed point. Like you don't have to, there's literally no other place on the ladder to go. And
Right.
so that becomes very uncomfortable for people. And rightfully so. No hate on that, clearly. I mean, and I feel honored that I get to help steward them in the direction that they go, but that can be really hard. And so I guess that would sort of be like or the results for me in my spark process. And I would ask you is how do you know when good is good enough for you now? From a result standpoint, how do you know what success is for you now? So if it's not defined 9 to 5, it's not hitting the KPIs that a big corporation monitors like on the regular. What
Mhm.
do good results and what does success look like in your brain now?
Sure. So definitely there is a dollar amount that I try to hit. I work with, a financial person that because that is numbers is not my strength. And I
Yes.
have someone that kind of works on my side to help me know, like, what do I have to hit monthly? So I know that that's my goals, financially. But on top of that, and I think the thing that is more helps me feel more complete within my role is the positive feedback I get from my clients. Like I was mentioning that, I want to make them feel like they have this strong foundation, that they have this confidence. There are elements of conversation when I hand over my deliverables to my clients that they're like, wow, I feel so seen. I feel like you heard me. You took what I said and you actually created this thing that I feel it feels like me. It feels like the thing that I needed. And it's always this like wow moment that I get from them. And having that with my clients is just it's so great. It's better than any dollar amount that I get from anything else. It's so great to make them feel like they have that missing piece to move forward and to create this future for themselves. That's always the most rewarding part of what I do. And I get really excited when that happens. So the more sales I make and the more like opportunities I have to have those types of reactions is what gets me going. So yeah.
Yeah. I'm smiling because so well said. It becomes to a place where you get in your life and it's better to be doing the giving than it is to get the receiving. We're no longer in this stage of our life where let's receive the accolades, receive the money, receive the next ladder. Again, there's nothing wrong with wanting to do that. I definitely
Hmm.
sample size one, that's what I did for 25 years. However, now that receiving or sorry, the giving and actually being able to provide an experience where someone is changing their own life and you're helping them to do it is really where it's at. I completely agree. It's completely priceless for sure. So you often talk about how clarity comes from movement instead of waiting. So waiting until you feel ready. Everyone's waiting. And this to me is like an energy thing. Like, are you stagnant? Are you unplugged? Are you drained? Are you waiting? So this for me is like kinetic energy, which is that part of my process. So how has taking imperfect actions helped change your life?
Yeah. So I think kind of going back to one of your original questions with the mindset piece, like I am a perfectionist. And so doing things in the beginning was really difficult for me, or putting them out there was a really difficult thing because I was over analyzing. I was overthinking. I was trying to make sure it was perfect before I put it out there. The website had to be designed perfectly because this was an example of who I was and what I was doing. And that was really hurting me because it just wasn't out there. At a certain point, my therapist was like, when are you going to launch it? When are you going to put it out there? And I started to see that that was the thing that was holding me back the most was my perfectionism. And one of the things I try to tell my clients is let's get the foundation out there. If it's not working, if you're seeing things that don't feel aligned, or we can always change things. But I think the analyzing and the, analysis paralysis, it's real. You need to be able to just get it out there and see what happens and test it and try it. And then we can readjust from there, make the updates and the changes. I mean, that's what we did in the corporate world too. We were constantly just like moving and throwing things out there and changing things all the time. And so I realized like in order to actually make things happen, you got to move fast and things are going to be imperfect sometimes, and that's okay. Intention can still come from imperfection. You can still be intentional with what you're doing, but it might not be pristine and perfect and exactly the way it should be because you're always going to find something. You're always going to find something wrong with it. I'm still tinkering with my site all the time. I'm still tinkering with, the design here and there. That's just the nature of it. It's a living, breathing thing. And so I try to tell people that when we're working together, this is a step into the right direction. And if there's a reason for us to update, there's a reason for us to update. And that's how it should go. So I hope
I
that
love that. I love this invitation. I always like to think of things on a continuum, right? So people
yeah.
think that like very binary, black or white, yes or no. And I like to
Yes.
invite people into a world of continuum. So it's interesting because what you're saying is, I think some people might think that imperfection is on one side. It's like, oh, it's so bad, it's imperfect. And then intentions like the other side. When the
Mm,
reality is, I love this invitation of it can be very rooted in intention and
mhm,
still not be perfect. And that's okay. And
mhm,
depending on what your intention is, you might be intending to try, intending to test, intending to see what connects with your audience, and that's okay. And I don't think that we give ourselves enough permission to do it. I mean, that gets into a whole other conversation around failure too, where people are so afraid to fail because we've not created a culture by which that is something that's rewarded. So I think that that's a really good gift to people listening is this thoughtfulness around what you can be intentional. It still doesn't have to be perfect because at some point you have to stop working the problem because you're
mhm.
not gonna get to the other problem, or you're never gonna get to the world of abundance if you're just, like, pruning the bonsai tree over and over again. We need to
100.
get out there and let it be a little bit messy and have a little bit of fun with it too. That's the other thing I always consult my clients who are moving into their own business ownership is, like, have a little fun with it. Like, if
Yeah,
you didn't wanna have fun, you'd still be in corporate America at
right,
that job that you didn't wanna do.
right.
So let yourself test and have a little bit of fun with it. The audience remembers one thing from today. What is the main thing that you would want them to take away from you today?
So I think the biggest thing would be to use yourself when you're thinking about your marketing and who what your brand is. Make sure that you're identifying with who you are when you're considering how you're communicating with the world. Because, one of the things I always like to preach is that with AI right now, everything is watered down and so generic. And if we're not being authentic and true, then people are just going to pass you by. Just look past it because people's eyes are starting to glaze over all the AI content out there because there's so much of it. And
Yeah.
so if we're not authentic, then people are not going to be driven towards it. People buy from people now and not for the product or for the thing. They want to support humans. And so I think it's really important that we communicate who we are when we're selling our work or selling our thing. We want to talk about who we are, and how we identify and who we want to work with. Who are those people? Tell them who you're looking for because
Yeah.
that's really important too. So really be honest and authentic. That is my biggest takeaway for everything.
Love that. And it's so good. It is so good. And honestly, then if it gives us a permission slip to do so, it's just such a better existence. You're a better leader, you're a better web designer, you're a better coach, you're a better name the thing, better mom, parent, if you're really being true to your authentic self and what those
So
values
good.
are. So, okay, well, thank you so much, Nikki, for being with us today. Where can people find all the things about you? And I'll put the links in the show notes, of course, but what else would you want them to know about you and where they can find you?
Yeah, so I have a personal channel on LinkedIn that you can find me talking here and there. I'm on Instagram. I have a website and I also have some things on Pinterest, but mostly on Instagram and LinkedIn is where I'm at these days.
Beautiful. And everything's branded Flower Buds Creative.
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being a guest today. We really appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing your story of burnout and then giving us some tips and tricks on how to be successful as a small, medium sized business that's a mission led or women led business. So we really appreciate your time today.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much for asking me here.
Thanks.